go? What were the top takeaways?
Well, the summit has been awesome. First off, thank you so much for having me. And the wonderful intro. It's good to be here. I'm excited. No, the summit has been amazing. I mean, I think that as we all know, I think the common themes, we talked about it on What the Truck, but the Montgomery ruling obviously has had a lot of conversation surrounding it, and just being able to touch on that with some guests that we had on What the Truck. Andrew Weimer, of course, with Descartes was on the show, and it was a fantastic conversation. Andre Dratenko was also, there talking about the cargo theft aspect, which we'll get in with, of course, Danielle Spinelli, the fraud girl.
Yeah.
So excited about that one. And then our keynote was Mr. Jeff Wood, who recently migrated. It's a great story. Recently migrated from Minneapolis and is now here in Chattanooga and is leading Steam Logistics domestic division entirely. So had a lot of good nuggets from that summit and conversation with Jeff. And overall, it's been a really, really good day.
Good. Yeah. I wish that I got to tune into more of it. I'm sure I'll be able to rewatch parts of it, but it is always a great event, and certainly nice that it's virtual so people have more opportunity to attend it and get that info and knowledge from it.
Absolutely. And I think just as big as, not only in Chattanooga, but I mean, domestic is it's the bread and butter, I think, of trucking and supply chain. Yeah. I just naturally is where my head goes with my history. So, but yeah, I think it's outstanding. And I love that we have events like this at FreightWaves, not only with this, but of course, previously we've had with, the fraud symposium. We're going to have the AI symposium coming up here in Chicago. It's just little events to really just kind of compartmentalize the different things. And I think it's fantastic.
I love our events because I love interacting with others in the industry and certainly our Sonar customers who are there. So F3 is like, the week of the year for me, but I also have really loved a little bit more intimate events that are very topic focused, like the AI and the fraud, where we really get to get a lot deeper into those topics. They've been great, and I've learned so much at each one of them. So
yeah, couldn't agree more. It's a real special time at each one. So
all right, with that, we are going to get into headlines in the Morning Minute.
We kick things off at the nation's busiest container gateway, where front-loading is fueling a massive early peak season surge. The Port of Los Angeles handled 840,165 20-foot equivalent units in May, up 17% from a year ago, driven by higher import volumes and a less than certain supply chain outlook. Los Angeles Executive Director Gene Soroka credits the strong performance to the resilience of the American consumer and businesses adapting in a continuously changing environment. Loaded imports surged 26% year over year to 449,370 TEUs, rebounding sharply from May 2025 when import traffic was severely undercut by President Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs on China. Empty containers, often a sign of import traffic to come, checked in at 283,138 TEUs, up 18% from the prior year. Soroka noted that cargo is moving for a combination of reasons, including inventory replenishment, concerns about fuel costs, trade policy uncertainty, and preparation for upcoming retail seasons. Meanwhile, the truckload market's upswing is officially ushering in driver pay hikes across the sector. Joliet, Illinois-based carrier GP Transco announced Monday it has increased pay for all company drivers by 5 cents per mile, pushing the upper end of its pay scale to 72 cents per mile. Top performers will also have a chance to earn another 6 cents per mile in incentive pay, giving first-year drivers the opportunity to make nearly $100,000 annually. Separately, Iowa-based Hirschbach announced its over-the-road company and lease drivers will see a total pay increase of 10 cents per mile in the coming months. A supply-led trucking recovery has prompted the need for enhanced driver pay and perks, with heightened regulatory enforcement purging non-compliant drivers from the market since last fall. Many publicly traded carriers appearing at investor conferences in recent weeks have flagged the potential for double-digit rate increases this year and next. Finally, the Federal Railroad Administration is greenlighting expanded testing of high-tech track inspection systems as Class 1 railroads prepare for a major safety upgrade. The FRA recently approved a 5-year waiver that lets railroads expand the use of automated track inspection technology, which uses lasers, cameras, sensors, and sometimes ground-penetrating radar mounted on regular freight trains to scan tracks for defects. Major freight railroad CSX plans to start using the waiver on parts of its network beginning July 1, 2026, deploying the technology across over 3,000 route miles and more than 4,500 track miles. According to the Association of American Railroads, early data is clear. ATI is more effective than visual inspections alone, in some cases reducing track geometry defects by 90%. CSX plans to deploy 3 geometry platforms, including 9 ENSCO autonomous boxcars, 2 traditional geometry cars, and 1 Holland locomotive-based system to catch track problems earlier and more accurately.
Thoughts on all 3 of these headlines today, actually.
It's amazing. I can't wait to get to this. This is great.
Okay, so first, peak season, surge, Port of Los Angeles.
Yes.
We've had Gene Soroka on the show talking about the port. He was a great guest.
Of course, opening week.
Here's why I'm excited about it.
Okay.
So we've been talking about, everything in this freight market being driven by lack of supply, not necessarily demand, but I think this is a huge indicator that demand is coming back as well, and that consumer confidence is likely coming back. People are restocking their inventories, which is why we're seeing this, additional imports. And I think that as gas and oil prices continue to go down, consumer confidence will continue to rise.
I could not agree more with that statement. Isn't it something that we've just kind of this industry is cynical, right? It's always doing this. And for the first time in a long time, it feels good in knowing that, all right, we are on the up and up of this thing, right? So.
Yep, so that's a good one. The driver pay increase, certainly, listen, markets get tight. It's harder to retain drivers. It's harder to recruit drivers. You certainly know that firsthand from a recruiting standpoint. I know it from a retention standpoint. 5 cent per mile plus incentive pay increases, and then Hirschbach with the 10 cent per mile pay increases for OTR and lease drivers. I wrote a sit rep on this. You can access it in Sonar if you're a current Sonar subscriber, or you can get it through Market Monitor via FreightWaves. But the reality is tight markets make it harder to recruit and retain drivers. They talk to each other. They want more miles. They know that there's more money in the market. These situation reports are a great resource for these sorts of topics. They're deep research, educational, not a sales blog on how Sonar can help you, but really a good amount of information on the topic. So I would suggest anyone check that out for sure as well.
Something just flew in my mouth. I have no idea what that was, so I'm sorry about that. I'm over here dying on the set.
I'm trying to just keep talking so you have a minute.
I appreciate it. It's something literally, I was just like, what just happened?
It's real life. It happens to all of us.
So with this second point with this, what I saw and I really appreciated was the fact that there is an incentive pay. Like, yes, there is supposed to be that always for drivers, but this is like a true, hey, like there's an opportunity specifically for first year drivers to be able to cross that threshold, which is the
6 figures.
That is the mountaintop per se for earlier performers. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is showing and telling of innovation that is happening before our very eyes. All 3 of these stories, when you really look at them and break them down, but this one specifically is just showing you how truly the times are changing. To your first point with our first story, when it comes to demand, there has to be somebody able to deliver when it comes to that demand. And I think that's really cool.
And you would hope in this market that drivers can earn that
100%.
wage, because carriers' utilization should go up. They should be getting the miles per week to earn a decent living, not sitting, not deadheading, not waiting for their next load. So.
Absolutely. And it's really cool also. I wrote another point down here too. Just being able, again, the top performers and just seeing over, the course of what this is going to look like in their trajectory, being incentivized to perform well. That's not oftentimes, it's always bash a driver. In my case, when it comes to the brokerage, it's the driver's fault, or this is, it's not my fault. This is, based off the carrier. It's like, no, let's incentivize those that are really doing well and stepping up and being able to do that.
I agree. I mean, and I obviously have tremendous care and respect for drivers based on my background, and we're excited to talk about that with our last guest too. But, and I want to get to Danielle, but one more thing I want to talk about regarding the headlines. So the railroads are expanding this automated track inspection, and I know that there's always a counter argument to that like, okay, this is anytime you automate something, it's going to take jobs.
Yes.
I have a hard time with this one falling in line with that. If it's anything that we can do to make our rails or anything where people are involved and they've crossed traffic patterns as well safer.
Yep.
And based on the stats, it does look like it should be more effective and create safer rails. So what are your thoughts?
I think that when it comes to rail, I think we are truly, and I'm not trying to make a pun here, at a crossing road. Like I do think that we are at this point where our innovation does have to be front and center stage, or else, this is not going to be an effective mode of transportation to be able to leverage for shippers across the country. I think people want to utilize rail, but then also there's a lot of weariness that comes with it simply for the fact that there's a lack of education. So I think that this being front and center and being able to have the innovation come within when it comes to rail is only going to make things better for us long term. But in the short term, it's going to be able to have creativity from being able to ship in different perspectives with different modes. So
that was a pretty good crossroads pun.
Listen, I'm a punny guy, I'm excited.
All right.
So.
With that, we are going to get to our first guest, Danielle Spinelli. So the Supreme Court's landmark ruling on broker liability is sending shockwaves through the freight industry, and it's accelerating demand for the kind of real-time carrier intelligence that didn't exist a decade ago. Here to talk about what it means on the ground, Danielle Spinelli, Director of Partnerships at Genlogs and the host of Tell Me Everything, is with us today. Danielle, thank you for being here.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
So let's talk about this Montgomery ruling and the preemptive, shield that brokers have relied on for decades, and it's gone. So how is Genlogs responding to that?
Genlogs, because we do have that unique data set where we're able to kind of have the eyes on the road, we basically developed a way for you to be able to see if the carrier is reasonable and have ordinary care based on asking them the hard questions. And then making sure that they actually have a reasonable policy to go in place. And that's really what the Supreme Court was asking for, is making sure that you are asking those drivers a hard question, because they really don't have the ability to see everything on the road because they don't have enough staff within the FMCSA. And speaking on that, it's just interesting with FMCSA inspections, just how sporadic it is. It's really hard for a broker to get a full picture on what a carrier's safety record looks like. I mean, there's only 90% of carriers that are unrated. And then I know Genlogs, we've seen over 30,000 carriers that has never had an inspection. So how do you get insight on those carriers? Do you make it where you can't have those capacity? No, that makes things harder, especially right now with times with capacity being tighter. Genlogs has really developed our own review score. So since we're able to see how they're operating on the road, we're able to give that predicting how a carrier is able to how they actually drive and the likelihood of them getting involved in crashes. So it's interesting because of that. We're able to we've even done some back testing and seeing based on our score and our review. Were they more likely to get into an accident? And so that's why insurance companies and shippers are really relying on Genlogs to help them have the insight on these carriers, because there's not enough FMCSA on the road to be able to do that.
Danielle Spinelli, this is officially Malcolm here, so I'm back. I don't know what happened earlier. I was not doing well, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Of course. Well, we're going to talk about, of course, you telling us everything. First off, happy 1-year anniversary officially to the Tell Me Everything podcast. Very proud of you. Very proud of you. This is awesome stuff that you're doing, and just want to recognize that. We'll get to that in a minute. But fraud-based pickup scams have climbed sharply in Q1, and thieves are shifting from physical theft to identity deception. What does this look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's the phishing attempts, as far as strategic theft, it's the phishing attempts getting into a legitimate carrier's email. Really right now, especially with the SCOTUS ruling, they're wanting to look squeaky clean. They're wanting to have these type of carriers, facade of them being able to get into a broker's system. So MC sales, phishing attempts, things like that. I actually just worked an investigation the other day where it was a load of seafood that got stolen. And what's interesting with having Genlogs information is we were able to kind of see that carrier being strictly in Miami. They only did drayage stuff. And then all of a sudden with this particular load, they were wanting to pick up a reefer load up in, I think it was New Jersey, if I'm remembering right. And so being able to see how they actually operating on the roads, and then also what type of equipment are they running? I think things like that is giving, I guess, security to the brokers and shippers out there on who they're working with, because they're able to kind of zoom outside of their scope and see how are these guys actually operating. Does this make sense with the load I'm putting them on? So I kind of went into like how to actually fix the thing too, but that's kind of the what's going on and ways to fix it.
I love that. I love that. You know, when it comes down to it, there was something there's a story that you hopped on with the truck and you told us about a ride along. And I love this story. And I would like for you for our viewers that aren't aware of just how pivotal this was, not only for your podcast, but I'd say your career as a whole. I mean, it really has taken shape, and this ride along is a perfect caption of that. Do you mind educating our listeners about just the things you saw while you were in California on that ride along?
Yeah, so the California Highway Patrol, their cargo theft task force, shout out to those guys. They are literally amazing and they're doing big things out there. But I got to do a ride along with them. And they took me out on the rail lines. And at the time we were doing an investigation, or they were doing an investigation, I was with them, but they were doing one where they had like a house that they were thinking, like a stash house right on the rail lines that they were wanting to investigate. So they took me out there. I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and just walking the rail lines and seeing like at the scale of all the things we hear, I guess, on rail theft, like being able to see like all the broken seals, every step I took, seeing boxes everywhere you looked. I mean, it was just wild. I know earlier before I came on, you guys were mentioning like rail having the AI stuff come in. I mean, they don't have enough officers to be able to patrol like miles and miles and miles of like the Mojave Desert, for instance. And so I think this is the way like AI would be great for them in that regard. But it is definitely wild what I witnessed out there. Just, I mean, I talk about it all the time. We all talk about it all the time, but being able to see it in firsthand was just crazy.
So Danielle, speaking of seeing things actually seeing them, Genlogs captures 15 million truck images a day. So talk us through that physical truth layer, how it actually helps stop fraud, and some of the things that you guys can do with those images.
Yeah, with the images, you're really able to see, like I'm big on is we're kind of past the point of carrier vetting. I want to get on that driver level vetting. So how do I see exactly who's going to be pulling up at my shipper? How do I know that this guy isn't just somebody who hacked into somebody's email and is trying to digitally, alter who they are? It's being able to see who physically they are. So it's a different way of taking those images and I guess like vetting the carrier, right? Like being able to see like this carrier, like I was saying with that Miami example, like being able to see like, hey, this guy only operates in Miami, only with drayage. Like, what is he doing calling in about, a reefer load up in the Northeast? Maybe it's where they had a new truck come on or something like that. But that at least should throw up a red flag where, if something's going on here, I need to investigate further. Maybe I go with the guy who's safer, that's $50 more or something, because I have that ground truth, level of images.
Yeah, so Genlogs is a partner of Sonar, and we are able to use your data in our supply chain intelligence system, and we do use some of those images for exactly what you are talking about, vetted carriers and understanding their network and where they normally run so that shippers can see carriers in those lanes that they might be looking to source. I think there's just such a vast amount of data and benefit from having those images and understanding what regular actions a carrier is taking so you can see something that is out of the norm and let it throw up that red flag to be vetted or looked into further. So speaking of partnerships and the Sonar partnerships, what partnerships at Genlogs are you most excited about right now? What's happening in your world there?
Yeah, it's a super fun time since we're kind of building out the whole partnership landscape. First thing first, I guess, is the TMS integrations, working with those TMSs to get more on that load level, which, like I said, that's kind of where we're at with cargo theft is you need to get on the driver level, load level vetting. Keep bringing up the same example, but that same Miami example, like if the TMS had an integration with Genlogs where whenever they assign that carrier that, hey, the carrier looks fine, and I assign them to that load, and then it hits back to Genlogs saying, no, Genlogs has never seen them in New Jersey. We've never seen them with a reefer. It throwing up that red flag. So having those barriers built in so that I was a carrier sales rep for 8 years. And so I know if it's not right in front of my face, I probably am missing it. That's one I'm really excited about. And then another one that I'm so excited about, I think it's just super cool for the shippers are like a gate management system, like where they have almost like a virtual guard check. They have the cameras up there. And so having those those cameras hit back to Genlogs to say, hey, outside of my gate, how do these guys operate on the roads? So safety wise helps them with that. But even like the, double brokering, chameleon carrier, stuff like that, if they're right now, what we're finding out is they're going down the road and then like flopping on a different placard on the side. So have we seen this truck number and this trailer information with this carrier before? So Genlogs is able to kind of talk to that virtual guard shack and give those decisions. So that way you're not just letting anybody in just because they happen to roll up with the right credentials.
I think that's incredibly valuable to be able to see at your actual location or guard shack. Is it who I expected, who's actually showing up versus someone else? What else are you guys doing to help shippers as capacity gets tighter?
Well, like you were mentioning before, because we're seeing where carriers are running, we're able to see their routes. So really helping with capacity, especially right now with capacity being tighter. We're working even with like AI companies and reps out there seeing they're able to really find those carriers, like those good old boy carriers, right? Like they run from A to B. They're not on load boards. They're harder to find. So being able to see that those guys, and those are the guys, especially shippers want, because that they're going to take better care of the shipment because that's their livelihood is going from, the A to B shipment. So we've seen a lot of success with shippers and brokers finding capacity, especially whenever times are tough like they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what we're doing with your data and the Sonar supply chain intelligence tool. And we've gotten great feedback from those who are using it. So it's been a really good experience to work with you all through that.
Danielle, we talked about it earlier, but you do host the Tell Me Everything podcast. Just celebrated a year. Again, congratulations. Talk to me, and I have a few questions about this. A year in, how do you feel right now about everything when it comes to Tell Me Everything?
It's honestly been such a roller coaster, being able to like build something and be creative and come up with something. I mean, I come on shows like this pretty often on other podcasts. So being able to kind of have my own platform. And then really I used it initially to learn. Like I wanted to ask all the questions and learn as much as I can about all the different facets. And then like the fraud girl side, I've had people walk up to me at a conference and say like, hey, I've watched all your fraud girl things, or I've watched this episode and this, we changed our processes with this and this helped me prevent a theft here. And so it's just really cool being able to see the impact, as I'm on the road and meeting people. It's just been a really fun year. So
I love that. I'm a huge sports person. You've been on What the Truck and you've heard the sports references. And I think me and you, it's Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. I think you might be Brady, though. It's just, I really do, respect your talent and what you've been able to do. And I've learned a lot from you. And seriously, I really just, it's great what you're doing for, not specifically just the industry as a whole, which you are, but when it comes to fraud as well as, freight security, the education piece. And with that is this follow-up question. What is something that people aren't necessarily talking about right now that you think should be front and center when it comes to just the entire freight fraud conversation?
Well, I guess like a newish trend, I think it's been happening for a long time, but we've kind of started talking about it, is just who you're hiring. On a carrier side, they're hiring. I know Scott Cornell's been on here talking about the Trojan driver. So like Trojan driver wise, and then even brokers having these like fraudulent agents come on. So really being able to vet who you're hiring. I think we've been so like, hey, we're trying to make money and grab as many drivers as we can, as many agents as we can, because we need the business. Instead, like let's take a step back, because they're actually grabbing information that way, stealing money from us that way. It's not just a load that they're going after. They're hitting us at all angles. So learning all those angles within your organization. And I'm really big on, you need to have a culture within your company of, it's not just your carrier sales reps knowing how to vet a carrier. It's your accounting reps knowing how to look at paperwork. And it's like I said, it's hitting all angles. So making sure you have that culture where everyone's educated, everybody knows what's going on.
Danielle, can you speak a little bit more about that? Because we hear, that so many of our customers, and then obviously people I interact with in the industry, have these great tools like Genlogs or others to alert them of potential fraud, to keep them compliant, but then they're being sometimes overridden by the actual operators. What do you tell your clients during implementation beyond like, this has to be a cultural thing to help them ensure that the processes are being followed?
My biggest thing is the integrations with your tools. I mean, that's part of the reason why I switched over to the partnership side of things instead of just staying on the sales side, because education just wasn't enough. It's not where your reps are, having that guard guardrail where like I cannot actually assign a carrier until it does hit my manager's desk and they review it. I mean, like I said, I was a carrier sales rep for 8 years. Like I know whenever times get tight and, customers screaming at you, that's a hot shipment, you need it out the door. You're going to roll the dice more. So putting those measurements in place where you can't just assign it because you're, roll the dice and go with it. You have that in place. So I think that's the biggest thing, is making sure your tech also aligns with your processes. And then having the proper channels, being able to, like, let's say if they do see something wrong with the carrier and they say no, being able to go back to that rep and educate them as to why. So that way it prevents them from trying to do something later.
So a hard stop in the system. It's 5:30 at the end of the day. You want to go home. You can't leave until you get the load covered. Don't allow them to take the easy option if it's not the right one.
Right. And that's why, like I was saying before with the TMS integrations with GenLogs, like making it where does this carrier's footprint make sense with what they're actually trying to haul? Because that's where we're seeing the majority of the cargo theft happen, is whenever something's not aligning, it's just not making sense. And so if all of those measurements happen and something still gets stolen, at least like this officially was the carrier that did it. It wasn't just somebody impersonating them.
So it is going to be June 17th, 2027, Danielle. What does success look like for the Fraud Girl if you had it your way? What does success look like?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think what's interesting for me is the industry as a whole is learning a lot, and it's really exciting to see like shippers even understanding what's going on. And so I continue to say like education is key, but I guess success for me will be at the end of the year whenever we get those reports back on how this year went. Like I want to see those numbers going down or at least holding steady so that we're not climbing every year. I mean, that would be like hoorah, success. I'd be so excited and feel like, we're making a difference.
And also a follow-up question to that. We like to here at FreightWaves Today always ask, what's your take on the market right now and just conditions and how it looks currently?
I was a broker, like I said, for 8 years. And so for me, this is I feel like we're finally getting back to what we were before. I think carriers need to make money. Brokers need to make money. For a long time, carriers were struggling to get by. And so I think it's a great turn. Obviously, I know it's hard and people are, having to stay late and cover loads and things like that. But I do think things will even back out. We'll get hopefully back to the same patterns that we had before, where it was peak season and produce season that were the tough times. And the rest of the year was maybe more on the broker side. So I kind of see everything leveling out. And I think long term, this is better for the industry.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think safety and compliance is absolutely something that's needed. Certainly, I don't envy brokers right now and what they're trying to do as the market finally turns now. It's so hard to find capacity, as well as this additional pressure of regulation and potential liability. If you had one takeaway for our viewers and for your customers at GenLogs of what they should be and can be doing now, what would that be?
Well, not to keep repeating myself, but the biggest thing is just kind of putting those guardrails in place. So if you know what your team needs to do and you have your processes in place, I'm hoping we've all experienced cargo theft long enough now where you already have that going. But now you actually make it where you have those stopping points and do not pass go, instead of just letting people go with whatever their gut feels, right? Like there's a lot more science that comes behind that. And for instance, like GenLogs being able to see that on the road, like this is truly the science behind what's all out there. There's not enough FMCSA agents out there to check every single truck. So this is kind of a way to give that insight.
Well, this has been great. Such good feedback and good information. Thank you so much for being with us today. We hope that you will be back on the show soon. Thank you, Danielle.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
What a good conversation. Obviously, fraud is always relevant, but she's also just lovely to speak with.
No, Danielle is awesome. I mean, what she's done in the industry, bringing awareness to it, the education piece. I mean, I know she said that she felt like she was repeating herself, but you kind of need to when it comes to something as pertinent and as important as cargo theft and freight fraud. This is truly one of the biggest, if not the biggest things happening in our space right now.
Yep.
Everybody needs to be front and center and radar when it comes to this.
Yeah. All right. With that, we are going to take a quick break. Then we'll be back with the Sonar Update and 3 more guests today.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara Driving Coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me, and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited, and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today, of course, joined by Julie Vandekamp. I am Malcolm Harris. It has been a great opening segment, of course. Again, Danielle Spinelli, the fraud girl representing GenLogs. It was an awesome interview. And we have much more content in store on the way here today at FreightWaves Today. And what would FreightWaves Today be without an appearance from Craig Fuller breaking down some sonar data? Let's look at this from Craig right now, guys.
So I'm here in New York today, and leaving LaGuardia. I'll be here for a conference today, and then I'll be headed back home this afternoon. Really reflecting on the conversations of the last couple of weeks here on FreightWaves Today, and really what's happening in the market, and just everything that we're seeing. You know, one of the big and most consistent trends that have been talked about is the fact that capacity is really driving the freight market right now. The lack of capacity, that's what's tightened up everything. This is not a volume-driven story. It's a capacity-driven story. It's pretty much the repeated sort of trend. Although I would argue that volumes, particularly in industrials, are better. And we see that in the rail data. We see it in some of the FreightWaves data. One of the things we introduced last week was something called the accepted a volume index, and that accepted volume index tells us how many of the tenders were accepted. It takes away the repetitive number of tenders so that you're not getting duplicity when multiple tenders go because of high tender rejection rates. Sort of works a lot like our CLAV index, the CLAV, which is contract load accepted volume, except it uses a bigger data set. So it does tell us more about sort of the general nature and streamlines the total activity. What it's telling us right now is that volumes are up about 2% in terms of total accepted. So that's sort of pure play truckload volume. But what we've been looking at is the cash shipment index. The cash shipment index did come out earlier this week, and we talked about it yesterday on the show, Julie and I did. But the cash shipment index is really has more exposure to LTL, I commonly get asked this by Wall Street investors. Why is cash shipment index showing declines where our data shows increases? And it's two things. One is the cash shipment index has got a little bit of a lag to it because of the way it is gathered the data. The other thing is it has more concentration to LTL, and having more concentration to LTL than truckload means that it's going to be a little bit later in the cycle to recover. The reason it's later in the cycle to recover is that LTL shipments get consolidated in truckload. So as you see a recovery, particularly in the industrial side, which is really a lot of what happens at the industrial segment, is a lot of industrials go by LTL. What you see is consolidation into full truckloads, and that's exactly what we've seen, where shippers are starting to really optimize their supply chains to take advantage of bigger order volume, particularly in manufacturing. So I think this is all super encouraging. We're finally seeing CASA's index increase and show some positive signs. I think that's a real positive for the overall freight market and health of the freight market. And I think we have resolution to the war. The Iran conflict, while hasn't been destructive to a lot of the industrial segment, in fact, you could argue that the war has been positive in some of the industrial segment data that we're looking at in terms of volumes, things like railroad volume, rail shipment volumes, and flatbed. It has all been positive, and you could argue that even when you look at like chemicals and petrochemicals, that higher oil prices do actually help that. You still have this sort of consumer drag or this consumer confidence issue. It is also, interest rates have been higher because of concerns about potential inflation. All of that has been factored into the market. But now that we have some resolution, or it looks like we have a resolution on that, oil prices are responding. We're down to $78 a barrel. That's, in terms of WTI, that's a real positive thing. That will help consumer sentiment. And as it helps consumer sentiment, we could see a more robust freight market. One of the interesting things is that container flows, particularly bookings out of China, are now showing up positively. We're now seeing activity. It's quite positive. It's been a little bit of a later shipping season or later booking seasons. June started off a little bit slower than what we saw in the last couple of years. Although last year they had Liberation Day tariffs, I do think that's starting to flow through. So all this to say is that I think we're going to have a pretty nice second half. I think there'll be some relief, some higher consumer confidence. Employment has stayed pretty robust. In fact, there's been some improvements. And now that the industrials are coming, AI, I think this capital sort of boom that's happening with these big IPOs of SpaceX and all of the AI stuff will also have an impact. So all that to say is I think you can be pretty bullish about the second half from a demand side, and that will, of course, put additional pressure on the freight market, and higher tender rejections is what we can expect with higher spot rates going into the second half. And if you're a shipper, your risk of running out of capacity is actually quite high. We're at 17% rejection rates. While those aren't trending any higher today, in the last really week and a half, they've been kind of sluggish or at least flat. You can expect that anything at any moment can turn over. And as we head into the July 4th weekend, we do expect capacity to tighten. We also expect that as we head into the second half, that shippers are going to struggle to find capacity as volumes pick up across the market, particularly the retail segment. Assuming that industrials continue their recovery, then all of a sudden you end up with much more volumes in the retail segment, which happens to drive the second half of the year. And then you end up with just tighter capacity. And so there's really no reason to think that isn't going to play out. And if I'm a shipper, I'm playing super defense, trying to find as many commitments as I possibly can and making sure that my carriers are going to honor their commitments. That probably means paying higher contract rates. Some predictions are double-digit contract rate increases, and I think that's probably I would say that 20% contract rate increases would not be unheard of when we look at year over year between this time and next year. We'll see you guys back in the studio tomorrow.
The hardest working man in freight right there, Mr. Craig.
Sleep.
I mean, I was going to ask you just candidly, what is his sleep schedule? Do we know?
I think it's a few hours a night.
I just don't know how he is everywhere all the time, each time.
Yeah, he has a lot more stamina than I do and does a lot better on little sleep than I ever could.
He does. Quick reactions from this. Julie, how did you feel about the sonar update? I know it was great from Craig, but just general things you took away from it.
So it's a lot of what we've heard before. Capacity is tight, driven by demand. We are driven by lack of supply. We are seeing demand to start to pick up. Excited to hear that in the Morning Minute about imports. I love talking about the new sonar tickers, new accepted tender volume index. There is a blog that I put out on the sonar website that explains exactly what it is and how to use it. So feel free to reference that on gosonar.com. I think it's a really useful index. I loved hearing Craig talk about it. It is up 2%. Because it takes in more than just contract rate, but overall percent of tenders being accepted. So it's really good to be able to look at and compare tender rejections, tender volumes, tender acceptance, and NTI, and see if they're all following the same spot rates, the same trend. And obviously all of those tickers are preceding indicators of spot rates. So it's good to see those, the trends they're doing, and then the spot rates usually follow them by about a week or so.
That is really cool.
So I've liked looking at that. I mentioned a bit before that the gas prices going down likely is going to help with consumer sentiment. We'll see that as imports come in. We'll know a little bit more about consumer sentiment probably as we get through Prime Day and some of those other sales that will happen towards the end of this month, next week, and see if people are buying things and what they're buying. But the last thought I had is he did talk about shippers at the end and how their routing guides are breaking down and how they're trying to lock in as much contractual and committed capacity as possible. We're going to be releasing another SITREP situation report on that this week. If it's not already out today, it will be this week on, that one was on recruiting and tight capacity, but we're going to be putting one out also on shipper of choice.
Nice.
With some of our market experts who have many years of experience working as shippers at large retailers and food companies. So
that routing guide piece that you just spoke on, that was actually a piece, I want to say it was Todd Maiden. He came out with this full article on it yesterday. That was in your Check Call newsletter. So you should go absolutely get that and check it out. It's some good stuff in there from Todd as well. So I know we have some conversations to get to, right? It's not just going to be us.
No, we have a lineup of a lot of really good guests. We're going to take a quick break now and hear from our sponsors. And then we will be right back with Matt Yearling from YMX Logistics. And we get to talk a little bit about something we haven't talked much about and some yard operations. It's National Safety Month, which makes this a great time to ask how your fleet can prevent more accidents. Samsara AI detects risks in real time, giving teams more visibility into what's happening on the road and more context to coach drivers before risky moments become incidents. Fleets using Samsara Complete AI Safety Solution have reduced crash rates by nearly 75%. See the data behind the results in the Samsara Safety Report at samsara.com/freightwaves.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara Driving Coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
The map is changing. As global uncertainties rise, the future of the supply chain is moving closer to home. Welcome to the new coast-to-coast North American network. Driven by massive reshoring trends and next-gen industrial innovation, optimized by AI workflows that build unshakable operational resilience, and locked down by proactive security against evolving freight fraud. Are you ready to navigate the shift? Join the industry's top minds to build the future. The FreightWaves Domestic Supply Chain Summit, streaming live June 17th. Register for free at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. See, the yard has long been the dark spot of the supply chain, visible to no one, optimized by no one. YMX Logistics is trying to change that. The company just launched what it calls the industry's first autonomous yard operating system, combining AI, computer vision, and electronification to turn yard operations from a labor-driven function into a controlled system. Here to talk about that and much more is going to be Mr. Matt Yearling, the CEO of YMX Logistics. Matt, so good to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, first, before we get started, how is the day going? How's the week going? I know it's been busy times at YMX Logistics.
Oh, the week is doing fantastically. So I cannot complain, trying to make as many customers as happy as possible.
Definitely.
So could you start by giving us a little bit of an overview of actually what you do at YMX Logistics, how you guys manage yards, how autonomy plays into that, just sort of big picture, and then we'll get a little more specific.
Yeah, so I've been in and around this space for a long time. And if you really ground it from the perspective of where has yard come over the years, you know, when you look at yard as a key focus, it's only starting to gain a lot of popularity now, but it really started back in the 80s when carriers and 3PLs were starting to look at this, and then you would start seeing some pure play providers in the 90s, and then technology enablement in the 2000s. That's really where I came into the business and really focusing on how to optimize this from a yard management system perspective. And so now getting to where we are today, we still see a whole lot of technology that is, widgets that are looking for a problem to solve, as opposed to how do you look at this holistically? So, I mean, really, the way that YMX looks at this is we're an AI native logistics company, really just focused delivering, optimization around yard operations inside the four fences, and so. We believe that there's a huge opportunity. It hasn't had the focus historically, just because it's a small part of the overall supply chain spend, but the impact is definitely felt, but not well understood. And so we're looking at this very differently than anybody else, pretty much with the same level of sophistication that occurs inside the four walls of a facility from a warehouse perspective.
So what is not looking at this as yard management systematically and using those widgets and piecing things together versus, implementing a system like you've talked about, cost shippers? What's the cost in not doing that?
Well, the cost of not doing that is the impact on warehousing and transportation. And it comes back to, and being shipper choice, right? There's many different problems that are manifested in the yard. And really what we're focusing on is, really getting past this blind spot, between transportation and warehousing, and really making the impedance mismatch being, eradicated, and really getting a little bit more predictable. Historically, it's been unsophisticated in the sense of, hey, I just need trucks and people to do yard operations, and hey, my warehouse guys are, saying that the yard is slow, pulling, empties to the door, or whatever the problem is. Even in manufacturing, industries have so many use cases associated with yard, and so pretty much it's like, how do you look at this very differently understand what the footprint is from a warehousing perspective on the yard, understand what the footprint is from a transportation perspective is on the yard, and look at this a little bit holistically. And then real time, how are you analyzing, how is it executing, and taking the journey, the customer on a journey of optimization over time. So, clearly we are operating trucks, drivers, technology, and then we've got specific IP from our perspective and how we lean in and really deliver on the promise of taking that yard risk and really propelling it to really driving value. I think the thing that people don't understand is the opportunity of driving value is significant. It's not recognized, not well understood. Nobody focuses on it. But if you look at it in a different way, for sure, 100%, you can actually drive a lot more value beyond the cost of operating the yard. There's so much value that you can drive in transportation and warehousing beyond how much it costs you to operate that facility. So the opportunity is if you've got yards across your network is how do you engage with a provider that actually is driving more value than what you're actually paying that provider to do service for you today.
Now, Matt, you've touched on this, and this is a great conversation. I want to touch on and kind of go under the hood as we're in transportation. So that's a good pun there. Walk us through, the autonomous yard operating system, just at a specific scope, and what changes on day one versus what a shipper had previously.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. You couldn't go to our website and say, "Hey, I want to buy the yard operating system." That is not what we're talking about. What you will find, especially if you're a big shipper, is they probably got some technology already involved in their operation today. So it's not like there isn't some level of a technology. What we do is come in and look at this very differently. We ask questions, we gather data, we model the operation and look at this in a very different way. And as part of a cost of us doing a service to the customer, we would actually augment with any relevant technology that would help propel this to the next level. So, for example, if a big shipper has got an appointment system or a yard management system, it's like, okay, but we've got issues of ingress egress in the facility of really fast passing our private fleet. And then we've got an issue with damage in general. It's like, okay, cool. So there may be some opportunities around computer vision at the gate to be able to accelerate or solve some of these problems. And so, again, we're looking at this big picture. We're not looking to deploy technology. We're being pragmatic and understanding what are the problems that are really going to drive the most value for the customer and taking them on a journey. What we typically find, and again, I'm guilty of this because this was my past life. I was an arms dealer. I was a technology arms dealer, trying to sell value. And 50% of the time, more than 50% of the time, the customer wasn't getting the value because it requires them to leaning in and leveraging that technology. Now, the advantage that we have is that we understand the technology enablement, and we're the ones managing it. So we're the ones that are going to extract the more value. It extracts value for the customer, and obviously it extracts value from us in terms of how we're operating it. And then from the autonomy perspective, it's not only the opportunity around autonomous trucks, specific use cases within the facility, but it's like, how are we looking at the data, how are we executing, and how are we looking at how that feeds back to the operations over time? Is there a better way of handling specific operations? So we're constantly analyzing everything to do with the daily operations and guiding our staff, our operations team to really look at actionable outcomes associated with that operation over time. So yeah, it's an operating system that's really proprietary to us. It's, as I say, it's AI native. We're not only looking at how we execute as an organization more effectively, it's really just more focused on how we're driving value and taking the customer on a journey. The last thing that we want to have is the only time that the customer sees us is to come back and actually do rate increases every year. In fact, what we have done is actually decreased the contract value associated with our customers because of the value and the optimization that we have delivered in some of these environments up to date.
Sounds highly customized and highly consultative, which is great. So Can you walk us through an implementation maybe you've done somewhere recently across multiple facilities and what those results looked like?
Oh yeah, look, I mean, I think where this really pays off is those sites that are really operating at scale, right? And I'll tell you what we do see is that we've still got the post-pandemic glut of overcapacity in the system, and so that still hasn't totally worked out of the system today. And so the classic one for us is a very large grocery distribution center where they've got 5, 6 3PLs operating that facility, one of which is us now, but the incumbent that was there before really were flying blind. They didn't have any technology enablement. The only technology that existed was 2 channels on a radio and pen and paper. That's really how that site operated, with more than 1,000 trailer assets on site. And now we can operate that from day one because we came in and leaned in and looked at how that was operating, moving from 22 primary units and spares down to 14. And now we're looking at how we're driving value. So we've identified several $1 million worth of value that the grocery shipper is now really just focused on taking out of the operation. And now they're looking at, well, how do we look at this and standardize across the network? And what is the opportunities? Everybody wants to do it faster, better, cheaper. And then there's other peripheral value add opportunities. As you can imagine, in a big shipper, there are many factions within the shipper in terms of wants and needs for even gate transaction. Do I look at this from a security perspective, or do I look at this as a velocity perspective, et cetera, et cetera? And like when you start looking at this in a different way, you're able to fix a lot of these problems and really, hold the mirror up to the customer and say, hey, how about we look at this very differently than how we traditionally looked at it, and really try to solve the problem. So again, we did more or less from day one, upgraded the experience. We deployed technology. We're now looking at data. We're now looking at, we now can measure where we're going. And now we're driving millions of dollars worth of value to that specific customer at that one location. And we've gone across the network and doing the same across the network today.
Now, Matt, take us back to last month. You were at ACT Expo on a panel with some great names. I mean, I'm looking, it's fantastic. Now, you guys talked and had a conversation, but specifically, how does yard autonomy connect to what's happening actually on the road?
That's a great question, because we're already having those conversations to do it today, right? So it's at the termination points of a autonomous over the road type asset. So we're already having those conversations, and specifically even to the grocery customer, we're having those conversations. And so how do you get that asset in and out, in the appropriate way, and make that efficient, and then have that handoff, and then hand off potentially to autonomy going on within the 4 fences, with an autonomous yard truck. So yeah, no, we're definitely focused on a lot of those aspects today, and some of those potential partners were on the panel as well at ACT.
Can we talk a little bit more about that idea of autonomous yard trucks? To me, it intuitively makes a lot of sense. A lot of our costs in my prior life were small fender benders, physical damage. Do you have any stats on if this improves not only from a driver standpoint, but from a overall operational and cost standpoint, if autonomous trucks doing this sorts of work improves those things? I don't even like to back into my garage, so.
So it's still, I would still say it's early days. I would still say there's a lot of pilots going on associated with autonomous yard trucks today, but we're working with the top 3. And believe it or not, there are more than a handful of companies that are doing autonomous yard trucks. And what you find, I mean, in my past life, I was in marine terminals. So, AGVs, between, quayside cranes and the stack, that's very well defined in terms of how you execute that. And it's very easy to drop the container on that AGV. This is very different. It's very different because when you look at the thousands and thousands of inland manufacturing distribution, nobody has any insight in terms of how the yard is sized, implemented, managed, laid out, optimized, because nobody has had the data. Okay, so it is interesting. So how do you optimize and automate something that is very poorly defined? So it is a process. So you really need to understand what you've got before you can start automating it. And that's kind of where we are today. So, and also, there are many different things associated with yard trucks, right? So glad hands in terms of, the hoses and, the tailgate, the doors on the trailer. How do you do all this? And what speed is good and everything else? And do you have to have specific areas in the yard that you operate? Do you have to avoid certain areas of the yard? So there's many different aspects and use cases. But for sure, it can coexist with operations. And so where we think it's going to get the broader adoption is, really defining those large operations where it pencils out, just like electrification, electric yard trucks pencils out, just because of the nature of the environment we're talking about. But it will pencil out in large operations where you've got, 3, 4 or more yard trucks. We're implementing, and complementing existing operations with autonomy. That could be a simple, shuttle activity or something like that. And really, as this technology matures, as the speed, because right now some of them are limited to like 5-10 miles an hour, as it really starts to drive, execution and optimization, then we get broader adoption across the distribution network.
Matt, this is almost a 2-for-1 question that I'm asking you, but can't let you leave without getting your take on the market. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. And then also, what's the big shift you're seeing in the industry right now that most people just aren't really necessarily talking about?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack on that question. And really the main thing is that we're seeing a shift of movement between looking at this from a commodity to a strategic asset. Typically, when a customer is looking for, these type of services, it's a procurement-led task. Now the business is getting involved, because now they're starting to understand that it is a key element associated with optimization for the network and for the facilities and just transportation and warehousing in general. So we're seeing that shift. What we're also seeing is we're seeing a plethora of technology companies trying to come after a small TAM. It's not a big market in terms of technology, and the thing that we see the most often is that big shippers are actually piloting 3, 4, 5 technology solutions that are pretty much the same, and they're trying to do a bake-off, as opposed to, again, stepping back and saying, hey, who's a trusted partner that knows yard operations more than anybody, and really try to guide what is the problems that you're trying to solve, as opposed to having fatigue around trying to find a widget and take them on a path. So the business and operational excellence and all of these best practices individuals in an organization are starting to look at this differently, and trying to engage an organization like us to look at this really focused on outcomes. We've gone past visibility. We've gone past insights. We're at the point where we can actually deliver outcomes, real value, right? And really the only way that you're going to get the conversation going with the logistics people is like, hey, here's the proof around, if you have your operation in the yard really executing the way that it should, look at all the opportunity for value that you probably have not even thought about. And so this is what we're seeing. It's starting to become a focus. It is starting to shift from being a commodity to being strategic. So that's what I'm seeing right now.
It's phenomenal stuff.
All right, Matt, thank you. I think we could continue to ask a lot of questions about this, but we are out of time. So thank you so much for being on the show. We hope to have you back and have more conversations about this in the future. Coming up, we are going to have John Kingston, editor-at-large for FreightWaves, on to talk about fuel costs, the continued volatility in the market, and what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz.
In freight, again, your customer experience is everything. Every quote, order, and status update is a chance to win or lose a customer, but that will still, again, run on manual disconnected systems. Pallet is the leading enterprise AI built for the supply chain, automating costly operations from code to cash across brokerages, carriers, forwarders, shippers, and warehouses. Mallory Alexander serves 3 times more customers per operator, deliver an exceptional customer experience at scale. Visit them right now at pallet.com.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
Getting reliable capacity can be complicated. Let RXO make it simple. As the 3rd largest provider of broker transportation in North America, RXO has the scale, resources, and expertise to help you tackle any shipping challenge. From a last-minute spot load to a managed transportation solution, from LTL to intermodal, from trained logistics experts to AI-powered freight automations, RXO has you covered from the first mile to the last mile. Start shipping on easy mode with RXO and get a smart solution to move your freight. Learn more at rxo.com/capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to, that's how I normally start with the truck. Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. I am Malcolm Harris, joined of course by Julie Vandekamp. Julie, it has been an awesome first hour of FreightWaves Today here on Wednesday.
Yeah, we have been really we've had great guests all along, and today is no exception to that. So it's been great.
It's been fantastic. And we still have much more to go. You guys recently just saw who is going to be on, but just in case we can go back over it. John Kingston, he's going to be talking about oil markets as well as diesel and the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to have some different conversations about the AAR rail numbers as well. And then Diane Hutsell, she is coming live to us from my alma mater, the Knoxville area. I'll just leave it at that. If you know, go Vols. She's going to be in Knoxville talking to us about the St. Christopher Truckers Fund on, again, the lifeline, keeping drivers afloat when illness takes them off the road. So this is going to be one heck of a second hour here on FreightWaves Today.
All right. With that, we are going to welcome John Kingston in and talk a little bit about oil and what's happening. Brent crude oil still high, diesel still high. We expect it to continue to fall, I'm guessing, as we seek resolution with Iran. But give us an update, John.
Relative term. I mean, Brent and diesel are way down from their highs on the commodities markets that were recorded in March, and they're certainly way down. And diesel alone is down like 30 cents in the last couple of days, a little higher this year. But now the fun starts. Now the fun, which is what's going to dominate here. This morning, the International Energy Agency, which is the big, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an international energy agency, mostly of consuming nations, came out with its monthly report. It was very timely. I mean, they made reference to the peace plan. And you could read their report in a couple of ways. I viewed it as, in the short term, being pretty bullish. You know, they talk about the buffers, that one of the reasons the price of oil, despite this massive loss of capacity, the fact that the price of oil did not go even higher is because of a lot of buffers. And the buffers include releases of strategic stocks all over the world, including the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It includes the fact that China really cut down on its imports. We're not really sure kind of what they filled that with. The buffer has been an increase in the United States exports. So to me, I'm not really sure why that would be seen as having an impact. It doesn't change the supply-demand balance. It just kind of reroutes them. The reality is that that supply is probably not going to come back as quick as some people hope. It's probably going to take longer to reopen the Strait of Hormuz fully than some people hope. And I know there's, the guy who's really kind of been the loudest on this is a guy named Jeffrey Curry. He was the former head of commodities research at Goldman Sachs. He's out on his own. And he has had really kind of the loudest box, or the biggest megaphone, saying that it's going to take longer than you think, that we've lost a lot of supply, that going out over the next several months, not only do you need to restore current flows, but you need to rebuild inventories. That's essentially like demand that was in the past that was transferred out by a withdrawal of inventories. Now is going to be replaced by new demand, trying to replace them. So I tend to be a little more on the bullish side. I don't think anybody should take a big, whoa, well, it's all over. We really got through that. I think we've got a long way to go.
So what do you think a realistic timeline is for the Strait of Hormuz reopening? I think we were thinking Q3, but do you think it's longer than that?
Well, Q3 could be July 1st. It could be September 30th. And, so if we're talking a reopening in the third quarter, I'd say it's going to be a lot closer to September 30th than July 1st.
So G7 allies pushed back on this administration's reopening timeline this past week. Now, what happens to diesel, John, if this deadline passes without a deal?
Oh, well, it depends on what happens. I mean, is there going to be a resumption of military action? That would be one aspect of it. Does Iran then seek to reimpose its will on the Strait of Hormuz? That's another aspect. I was texting with a friend of mine, a longtime friend who follows oil markets, and what we were saying was that the Strait of Hormuz had never closed before. Now it has. And that's now in the market permanently. I would have told you a year ago that if Iran tried to close the Strait of Hormuz, that it would result in the U.S. Navy going in there and blasting away and reopening it. Well, you know what? That didn't happen. And I think that drone warfare has made the calculation there considerably different. And I also think that as a result of that, you're going to find that the price of oil for the foreseeable future, even after things resolve, is going to carry a risk premium that it did not carry before. I don't know what that risk premium is. I can tell you what it's not. It's not zero. So I'm pretty bullish here. I would say in the course of my many years covering oil, I've tended to be bearish, and right now I'm probably more bullish than I've been for a long time, because I just don't see this thing snapping back quite that fast.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, regardless of fuel prices, carriers can't stop moving freight. So how do you think fleets are absorbing those costs?
Well, right now, I'll tell you that when you get prices that are dropping down this fast, the fuel surcharge works in their favor because it's at a higher level than the pump is dropping. So that's good. And certainly for independent owner operators who maybe book some freight, making an assumption of diesel at, $5.30, and now it's down closer to $5, that's a little bit of a boon. So it'll be interesting to see when the third quarter earnings start coming out in about a month, if people say that diesel was a tailwind or a headwind or not a wind at all. I think I've probably mentioned here that it's always kind of struck me as interesting that when I first started doing this, that trucking companies, where diesel is their second largest cost behind personnel, never talked about diesel prices, like positively or negatively. And that's because the fuel surcharge generally works. Not always, but generally. Right now, I'd say it's probably working to their favor, though I know Craig, I said that one other time, and Craig kind of schooled me and said, no, that may not be the case. But it's certainly when it starts to move this fast, I would say it's probably a tailwind.
Now, John, let's talk about this updated peace proposal that was sent from Iran to mediators last week. I always go to you, even on What the Truck, I always call you the source. So for me, I'm talking like it's me and you. How did you read this? Was this genuine? Was this noise? Was this something that I'm missing? I mean, how did you read this personally, John?
I'm probably not the best person to ask because, as you may know, I've been down the last 2 days. I was down visiting Mack Trucks in Bethlehem and Allentown, so I was a little bit removed from all of the talk about the peace plan. I just think, given all the number of times that victory has been declared, everybody's going to be a little skeptical. But I'm probably not the best person to talk about the details, at least not yet. But I'll get myself better informed. I promise. No.
I think that's a fair answer for you. I mean, of course, I go to you a lot when it comes to stuff like this, and I guess for those that aren't necessarily privy to this, I mean, what do you think in the next, if we just had 30 days just to kind of zoom out, what does this look like, and what should listeners be on the lookout for in terms of, all right, like, is this going to happen? Is there going to be, further setbacks? I mean, if you could just kind of toss a coin and call your shot right now, what would that shot be?
Well, from what I know, 30 days is a pretty short time in terms of this being disrupted. I would be more concerned at this point about 30 days. It's at the end of 30 days is when you start to hit, we talked about this before, tank bottoms, where inventories are down to their minimal level for the system to operate. Mid-July, that sounds like about a problem. And, we may have peace in our time and find that the biggest reaction, and one of the biggest reactions in the price of oil will come in about mid-July, when those buffers, as the IEA refers to them, have pretty much exhausted themselves. I will say this, I took a quick glance at the weekly U.S. inventory numbers that came out this morning. The stocks of distillate, non-jet distillate, which is mostly diesel, were down. They weren't down that much, but they were down. And this is a concern that we've just driven these inventories down so low. And, are you really going to get a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz that quickly to start replenishing them? I just don't see it. So I would say 30 days. I'd be a lot more worried about the oil market in 30 days than faltering peace.
So if there's one number or sign that you think that you're watching, that we should be watching, that tells us like we're actually turning a corner, we're getting resolution, we're going to be able to replenish the fuel stock, our stock, and maybe anticipate prices going down, what would that be?
I'd still say you want to look at the ultra-low sulfur diesel price on the CME commodity exchange. Remember that diesel was affected more than anything else by the shutdown, or all the various losses of supply, because diesel tends to come from heavier crudes. The Middle East crudes tend to be heavier. So I think diesel prices are, quite frankly, more interesting than crude. I understand that people will look at crude because it's very visible, but I still think, and I don't just say this because of this audience, I still think that diesel prices are the most notable.
All right, John, what else should we be watching in the freight market overall? What are you researching, reading, seeing lately?
I went down to Mack Trucks yesterday, and that was interesting. And it's, first of all, I drove a truck and didn't kill anybody, so that was good. So of course I was on a test track, so it's not that big a deal. But the more interesting aspect of this trip is that this is the second time Mack has had kind of the freight press, and really, it's really a trucking press. There are a lot of, OEM magazines and news services that aren't necessarily FreightWaves competitors. But Mack has a very, very small share in the over-the-road market, and they rolled out two new models last year. One is actually a remodeled, the Anthem, and the other is the Pioneer. And this is their big push into the over-the-road market. They say their order book is filled through the rest of this year, but you got this is not really a new company. Obviously, Mack Trucks has been around for a long, long time, but they're really making a push in the over-the-road market. And, look, if they carve out a few points of market share, they're probably down to below 2% now. If they carve out a couple of points of market share, that's got to come from somebody's hide, whether it's Freightliner or whoever. So you hate to say somebody like Mack Trucks, which has been around more than 100 years, is an upstart. But in that field, they are a new competitor. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they do.
Let's talk and go back a little bit to your reporting about the Strait of Hormuz for a moment, because I guess in my brain, I'm trying to get around the fact, what is this going to mean for contract negotiations, but also something I didn't think about until it just dawned on me, fuel surcharge programs. What does this mean for that?
I don't know that it has any impact on fuel surcharges. The whole idea of fuel surcharges is to take the open market price, not really a spot price, but in this case, the retail price of diesel as reported by the EIA every week, and pass it through to the shipper. So presumably that price will always reflect the broader international market. And this way, the shipping companies, the shippers, and the carriers don't have to worry about it in terms of deciding what it is. They just have to worry about, particularly if you're the shipper, because you're the one that's supposed to pay it. They just have to worry about how much of a cost this is going to be. So I just, I think the retail price of diesel will ultimately follow the global price of oil and petroleum in general. So in that sense, that's the whole idea of a fuel surcharge, to make it kind of I hate to say no-brainer, but you don't have to think about it. You got all these other things to negotiate. The fuel surcharge, is just there, and it kind of takes the decision-making out of it.
I look forward to getting notified whenever I see your name in our channel here at FreightWaves when there's some new news coming directly from you. What's coming down the pipeline in the next 48 to 72 hours that you can speak on? Because I know you're always working. That's what they say.
Let's see. I'm doing an interview tomorrow with Trimble. They are rolling out a shipper TMS. It's their first time in it. They bought a European company called Transporion a couple of years ago. And this is kind of like, as far as I know, like the second big initiative that's been that they've able to launch because of the capabilities of Transporion. We wrote a couple of times because I went to their big meeting last year about their I'm not going to call it a load board, but it's a platform designed to get shippers and carriers together. Okay, we'll call it that. So you probably say, well, that sounds like a load board to me, right? So now they're using the Transporion capabilities to create this shipper TMS. It is new. I can't really go into detail on it because I haven't had the interview yet. But look, Malcolm, as well as I do, the number of pitches that we get at FreightWaves of freight tech initiatives is overwhelming.
Yes,
and this one caught my eye. Maybe because it's Trimble, it's a big publicly traded company. So that caught my eye, but I know they've been doing some interesting things on the back of this Transporion acquisition, which I guess is about 2 years old now, maybe 2 to 3 years old. So this one did catch my eye, and maybe we can talk about it next week because I'm doing the interview tomorrow.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. All right, John, anything else that you think we need to talk about here? What your take is on the freight market for the rest of the year, if we're going to see demand rise at all?
Demand rise at all. I don't know. I'll tell you, I'll be straightforward. I don't know.
I think we will.
I think we will too.
You guys are smarter than me on that, you know?
I don't know that I know anyone smarter than you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Anyway, okay.
All right. Thank you, John. It is always a pleasure to speak with you and to get your insight on this. Really appreciate it.
Editor at large, the man in charge. Love John Kingston. I think there's a lot of insight. For those that don't, go on our website, number one, you're doing a disservice to yourself because this is where the show is awesome. But I think where you get the substance, it's like a meal at Thanksgiving, for example. Like the turkey, this is the turkey or the ham. Are you a turkey or ham person?
Turkey.
All right, so I'm a ham guy. But I think you can have it by yourself. It's great. But FreightWaves.com is where you get the mac and cheese, stuffing, dressing, green, so on and so forth. So that's why I think, and saying all this to say is that you combine the content that our writers put out with the show. It makes the show 10 times better. So that's my 2 cents from me to you.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Like, I obviously, read the headlines in the Morning Minute, and I always go read the article associated with it because there is so much more context there, and I really enjoy it.
It puts everything and puts the web back together, so.
Yep. All right. So we still have 2 great guests coming up, but we're going to take a quick break.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
The map is changing. As global uncertainties rise, the future of the supply chain is moving closer to home. Welcome to the new coast-to-coast North American network, driven by massive reshoring trends and next-gen industrial innovation, optimized by AI workflows that build unshakable operational resilience, and locked down by proactive security against evolving freight fraud. Are you ready to navigate the shift? Join the industry's top minds to build the future. The FreightWaves Domestic Supply Chain Summit, streaming live June 17th. Register for free at live.freightwaves.com.
The AAR rail traffic numbers are out this morning, and we have the perfect person to break them down. He also happens to have an exclusive. He rode in the cab of Union Pacific's Big Boy on Thursday, the world's largest operational steam locomotive, on its first visit to the East since it was built in 1941. So here with the data and the story is Bill Stevens, editor of Trains magazine. Welcome back, Bill. Always good to talk with you. The AAR numbers just dropped. So what are they telling us?
It was another strong week for rail freight in North America, as well as the U.S., which is the big dog, of course. Overall, rail traffic in North America was up 5.6% for the week. That's pretty much in line with the trend for the last 4 weeks that we've been seeing. In the U.S., it was up 7.2%. For the week, that was driven by 10.9% increase in intermodal volume. And that is in line with the last 4 weeks that we've seen the strength building up there, probably due to a combination of fuel prices being up, which makes intermodal more attractive, and also the tightening of truck driver supply, and then also comparisons with last year when we had some tariff volatility that affected the numbers. On the carload side, which is mostly your industrial products that feed the industrial economy, along with bulk things like grain, that was up 2.8% in the U.S. That's a little bit stronger than it's been over the past 4 weeks, which was 2%. If you look at the big three carload commodities, coal was down 8.3%. That's just ongoing structural decline, even if it was a little bit steeper than it has been. Chemicals, and this is a little bit of a concern to watch for. Chemical traffic was down 1%. But whether that's a producer outage or something else going on, we'll just have to wait and see. Grain traffic has been carrying carload volume all year, and that was up, over 20% again on strong exports, really. Another interesting thing to come out in this week's stats were metallic ores. They were up almost 20%. Something going on there with probably mine production increasing or coming back online, perhaps. But the solid trends remain intact here, where we've seen strong year-over-year intermodal volume growth above what the seasonal trends would be. And it's the same with most of those carload commodities as well.
I took a glance at it this morning as well, and my sort of key takeaways were ag's up, chemicals up, coal and forest products are down a bit, but lumber and wood are up in that forest products category, which I think is interesting, and I want to ask you about in a minute. But metals up and total intermodal units up 10%, total traffic up 7%. What do you think is going on with wood and lumber? Do you think it is transitioning to rail because there's not flatbed capacity available? And we've seen this over the last couple of weeks, up and down the last 3 weeks when we've reported on it. Any insight there?
Yeah, that could very well be it. If you can't find a flatbed, the first place you're going to go is to rail, and that could very well be it. There's so much volatility in the weekly numbers, though. I would, before reaching any conclusion, like to see what happens over the next few weeks and see if it trends a trend.
So what's your big takeaway, I guess, from the AAR numbers overall? What are they telling us about what the freight market as a whole will look like the second half of the year? We've talked about carloads, that they're a leading indicator really for what's going to later likely happen in the freight market, and that we can tell a lot about manufacturing from them. So what are your big takeaways?
Yeah, the big takeaways is, chemicals have been strong, and they're an input into so many things, and they include plastics, petroleum products as well. And then, the metals and the steel making, that's been going up. There's probably some tariff-driven impacts there as well. And obviously that goes into everything from construction to autos, you name it. So that's an important indicator as well. And the forest products, that's really not going to turn around until interest rates do, and home building really starts to take off, and that's just we just haven't seen that. But by and large, it looks like there's underlying economic strength behind the freight data here for the railroads.
Now, Bill, I need you to set the scene for me, because you rode in the cab of the big boy. What was this like? Walk me through this, man.
Was not at all what I was expecting. I've ridden in the cab of big steam locomotives before, but what was interesting about this one is when you put the world's largest in front of anything, it's going to bring people out. And so a lot of people come out to see the big boy. This was the first time in in the East since 1941 when it was built. And so the crowds have just been fantastic. Union Pacific estimates that 500,000 people have seen the locomotive at whistle stops like this one that you're seeing on screen now in Hornell, New York, and at the display days that they have from time to time. And that doesn't include the thousands and thousands of people who are lining the tracks, really every mile of the way. This crowd, as we pulled in after a couple whistle blasts, they cheered, and then those cheers morphed into chants of USA, USA. And I was really struck looking out the fireman's window here all the way along at the joy that this locomotive brought to the people, the looks on their faces, and that brief connection they had with history and this machine. It's like people want to rally around something, and this is it.
So this locomotive hasn't, from what I recall, been in the East since 1941. Why does this fact matter specifically?
This was built by the American Locomotive Works in Schenectady, New York in 1941. Okay. It left, went west. Its home territory was between Ogden, Utah and Cheyenne, Wyoming. And they were the largest locomotive built. There are only 25 of them. 8 of them survive today. Union Pacific pulled this out of a museum in California in 2016, brought it back to life in 2019, and it's been a roving ambassador for the railroad ever since and just draws really big crowds. But what the Union Pacific people told me is that once they crossed the Illinois-Indiana border into Indiana, which is off the UP network, and onto Norfolk Southern, the Eastern Railroad that is hosting this trip and is also a potential merger partner for Union Pacific, that interest seems to have really amped up, and there are more and more people being drawn trackside to see this locomotive. And it's doing a coast-to-coast tour. It started out at milepost 0 in Sacramento back in April. They are going to Philadelphia for the 4th of July, and then after that, they will head back for home rails.
This B-roll that we're looking at right now as you talk over it, Bill, is absolutely incredible just to see this in real time. So awesome job by production here at FreightWaves Today. Let's stay with Union Pacific for a second, because they're running this as part of America 250. What's the response been like along the route?
It's really been overwhelming. They had 61,000 people at a display day in West Chicago, Illinois, on the outskirts of the western burbs there. I went to the display day in Buffalo, New York. It was a weekday. It was raining on and off, and they had 28,000 people show up. And everybody's just impressed with the size of the locomotive. They love to see it, love to hear the whistle blow. And it's just brought a lot of excitement, and it doesn't matter what age you are, from kids on up to seniors. I met someone whose father worked at Alco, and his uncles and I think grandfathers as well. And, they said they were very proud of all the locomotives they built there over the years, but they were, the proudest of the big boys that they made just because of their size.
So for those of us who aren't necessarily train enthusiasts, why do we care about a steam locomotive?
It's the closest thing, I think, for a machine to a living, breathing thing. They really have a life of their own, and if you're around them, you can just sense that they're alive compared to when they're just sitting there. It's hard to explain. And then also, this locomotive is significant, especially, and all of those locomotives that were built in the 40s, because they really helped us win World War II. We were the arsenal of democracy during World War II. And unless you had locomotives like this moving freight, moving troops to the coast, none of that could have happened. So it's an important part of history. It's an important part of where the railroads were. And it's great that Union Pacific continues to show off that tradition today.
Me too. I love hearing your passion about it and the history behind it. It made me feel a little bit more like I may want to be a train enthusiast. So, Bill, thank you so much for talking through the numbers with us and sharing your experience and this story with us. It's been great, and I'm sure we'll talk to you in the coming weeks as the reports continue to come out.
Thanks, Bill.
Great. Thanks for having me on. Always great to see you too.
All right. So 2 days in a row now, I feel like we have talked about patriotism. We have talked about, Craig went on a little rant isn't the right word because that sounds like it's negative, and it was very positive. He's very fired up and excited.
He was on a soapbox.
He was fired up and excited about patriotism in the U.S. and obviously reindustrialization and taxation. And now we get to hear Bill talk about the patriotism that is surrounding this America 250 celebration. We're hosting the World Cup in America. And it is the 250th anniversary, and so there's a lot of things going on, I think, here locally that I'm seeing, and certainly lots of targeted ads I'm getting for decorating my home for the 250th anniversary of the U.S., but I'm feeling very patriotic in USA today. This
Absolutely.
Has been great.
I couldn't agree more. I kind of want a hot dog, and I have no idea why.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just kind of crazy. It's happening. July 4th is coming in a couple of weeks.
I don't think I'm going to wait till then.
I don't know if I can wait till then either.
I have little kids, so we have we have hot dogs at our house. It might be for dinner tonight.
Look at us.
I have been seeing these hilarious shirts on Instagram, and they're like raccoons celebrating the 250th anniversary. I'm going to have to go get one. They're making me really happy.
Listen, if it makes you happy, you go do it.
All right. So speaking of, I guess, feel-good things, honestly, our next guest is Diane Hutsell. She's the interim executive director and director of philanthropy at St. Christopher's Trucking Relief Fund. There are roughly 3.5 million truck drivers keeping this country moving, and when illness or injury takes one off the road, the financial fallout can be immediate and devastating. The St. Christopher Truckers Relief Fund has been the safety net for thousands of those drivers since 2007. So here to talk about that mission is Diane. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So obviously I care deeply for truck drivers. I grew up in this industry. I worked at a trucking company for the first 16, 18 years of my career. So I love that we're getting to talk about this topic. But for viewers who aren't familiar with the St. Christopher Truckers Relief Fund, what do you actually do for a driver in crisis? Walk us through what your organization looks like.
Yeah, so we like to say we're around for truck drivers in sickness and in health. And so when we started almost 20 years ago, the mission of St. Christopher's was to support drivers that are injured or sick and can't drive. They're off the road. And so if you're not driving, you're not earning a paycheck, and you're also probably compiling a lot of medical bills. And so trying to wonder about all of those things is really stressful on a driver, and then you can't focus on getting healthy. So what we do is if you're an over-the-road driver, which is 4 days or more on the road, and you've got bills that you can't pay, and what we will pay is we do rent and mortgage, insurance, we also do utilities, and we also do vehicle payments. And so that way we can help pay those bills, and then you can pay your medical bills and not worry about where that money is going to come from. The other side of that coin, the wellness part, drivers, they live only 61 years, or they live a lot longer than just the average person. And so, they live a sedentary lifestyle. It's hard for them to exercise. It's hard for them to eat healthy. So we want to give them the tools to be able to be healthy. And so we offer several different programs. We have Rigs Without Cigs, which is one of our first health programs. It's a smoking cessation program. We do free vaccines, so you can get a flu shot, a pneumonia, COVID, or shingles, all free. We have a diabetes prevention program that's going to help you learn how to eat better and how to control your diabetes and lose weight. We also have cancer screenings, and we've had prostate and colorectal cancer screenings for a long time, but we're really excited to have been able to add the cervical cancer screenings for the female drivers that are out there. And then we also have a program called Healthy Habits for the Long Haul, which is a chronic disease management. So you have a lot of drivers that have a lot of heart conditions, different regular health issues that is a regular part of their life. And so we actually have some great health and wellness coordinators that'll help them, give them the tools, how to support themselves, how to keep them healthy. So, we are here for the drivers, and we love what we do.
Well, I can definitely tell you love what you do, Diane. It's good to see you once again. I just want to put it really in perspective for our listeners and viewers. But before I do it, I thank you for what you guys are doing as an organization. It really is something that is inspiring, and I really do appreciate it just from all of us here at FreightWaves. It is outstanding, the stuff that you guys are doing.
Truck drivers are the backbone of our country. People remember not getting their toilet paper 6 years ago, and they knew how important drivers were. And now it's kind of people have gotten a little bit complacent. So, we're here to help drivers any way we can.
Definitely. Well, you guys are doing just that. Let's break it down by the numbers, because more than $5.5 million have been given out to over 4,100 drivers since 2007. Walk us through, what does a typical case even look like?
It kind of varies. We have different things. We had one driver that came home from being on the road, and he was in the shower and he fell, and he's a quadriplegic now. So we were able to help them pay their medical bills while they were trying to figure out how to get disability. We're not a handout. We're kind of a hand up. We're that bridge in between, being unemployed and finding the resources if you're not able to go back to work, or until you can go back to work. We've had where we had a gentleman that had cancer, and unfortunately it wasn't a good ending. He did pass away, but we were still able to help pay those bills at the end. So we were able to, take some of that burden off of his widow. We love hearing from the people that we support. One of my favorite things, because I love going to all the shows, but especially at MATSR and Iowa 80 was getting to meet the drivers that we actually helped, to actually see that person and see their families that we supported. And my first question is, are y'all back on the road again? And they're absolutely, I'm back on the road. We had one driver that had said, if it weren't for St. Christopher's, I don't know where I would be. I actually have a chance now. He was about to lose his truck because he couldn't drive. Well, by the time he was able to be healthy and drive again, he wouldn't have had a truck to drive. So it's a chicken and the egg kind of a thing. And so, we're here just to support all the drivers on the road and the companies out there.
On What the Truck episode, we were talking about the health of a driver. And I actually had a doctor physically come on the show and talk to us about screenings, for examinations that truckers have to get. And it didn't dawn on me that, this is life or death. I mean, these are real health challenges and issues that come about this. And beyond the financial aid aspect, I mean, you guys do run some robust health programs. I mean, you talked about a little bit, but just to list some cancer screenings, diabetes prevention, smoking programs as well. Why did the fund move into preventative care? I think I know, but I need you to double down on this one for me, Diane.
Well, I mean, just to be healthy, it's better to kind of get in front of things before it kind of gets out of your hand. Once you have an illness or once you have an injury, that truck keeps going and it keeps going fast. And it's the difference between, are you behind the wheel or are you in front of that truck? And so we're just here, we're trying to support drivers so that they can maintain and stay on the road and not have to worry about being pulled off, and not having their family stress about, okay, how are we going to pay our rent this month? Or how are we going to pay our car insurance or our truck insurance this month? That's just the mentality about it. We want to keep everyone healthy. It would be my dream if I didn't have to fundraise so that I could find funds to help, pay the bills. That would be my ultimate goal, where we were just doing health programs and wellness programs. But the nature of the beast is that we have to have both of them. But, we want everybody to participate in all of the programs that we offer. They're free. Because we have so many great sponsors and partners, both corporate and on an individual level. All of this is free.
That's amazing. So I'm going to channel Craig, because I know if he's here, he would ask this. Obesity, diabetes, they're endemic within the driver population. As you mentioned, a sedentary lifestyle. Are you seeing GLP-1s have an impact on that?
Great question.
Good question. Not at the moment. And I mean, it's kind of part of the conversation as these new things come up. but it hasn't been a real robust part of that conversation. That's one of those things that we're going to look down the road. We're getting ready to celebrate our 20th. So as things in the world evolve, just like with being able to add the cervical cancer screening kits, St. Christopher's is definitely going to evolve with what's happening in the real world.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, drivers are independent by nature in many cases and sometimes resistant to asking for help. So how do you reach drivers to make sure they're aware of the services you have available and are able to take advantage of them?
I mean, the biggest one is being able to get in front of drivers. That's been my mission since I started, about a year ago. Obviously my job is to raise the funds to be able to support drivers, but my heart is definitely into being able to help drivers. My dad worked for Mac, my brother-in-law has a CDL. And so being at MATS, being at Iowa 80, being at these different shows where you get to meet the drivers and face-to-face and show them what we do. But then also because we have some amazing partners that are, have for a long time, not just the financial sense of it, but just that sense. We actually are working, over the years with Travel Centers of America, Loves, Progressive is an amazing partner with us, Pilot, which being in Knoxville, their offices are just down the road. So it's really nice to be part of them and Triumph. And so we have some great partners that are figuring out ways that they can promote St. Christopher's through their channels. You think about all of, Progressive and Triumph, they have so many, they have access to so many different outlets that we don't. We're a relatively small staff. I say people, we are small, but we are mighty. But being able to piggyback and partner with people in the community that genuinely care about what happens to drivers, not just because it affects their bottom line, but they genuinely care about the drivers, it's a nice bonus because, again, like I said, we're small, but we're mighty.
So speaking of being small but mighty, how can those of us who are interested, shippers, carriers, brokers, how can we help support the fund?
Well, obviously, you can always send me a check. Our big goal is to have one of those nice, big, fancy checks, but, both ways. Being an ambassador for St. Christopher's, a lot of the things that is frustrating is we hear people say, gosh, I actually had a trucking company, we've been around for 30 years. How come I've never heard of you? And so that's our goal, especially this year, is to get in front of, so drivers know that we're here. And so thinking on a smaller scale with those owner operators, if they can share with what we have, what our resources with their drivers, and say, if you need more assistance beyond what we can do to you, here's St. Christopher's, reach out to them. They can probably help you. And even on an individual basis, we have a lot of individual donors, that are $5 a month. And whether you give me $100,000 or you give me $5 a month, you're going to get the same respect and love and the same handwritten note from me that anybody else is going to get. And so we do have a lot of that. But the biggest thing is just being an ambassador for St. Christopher's, telling people what we do so that we are accessible. I don't want to have to hear anymore, gosh, I was a week away from being thrown out of our house and I don't know what I've done without you. We want to be that first place that they go to when they have an issue. And even if it's something that we can't help with, we have a list of resources that we can say, okay, well, we're not able to help, or we're only able to help, in this dollar amount, but have you tried this? And so we're real one-on-one, we're a real case-by-case basis. So, we talk to you on the phone. If you call, you're going to get one of our staff here, but those resources are also online. And so, again, just being an ambassador to St. Christopher's that are out there. And if we can support their drivers, by all means, give me a call.
I want to go back to the preventative care for a minute. So of the programs you are offering, which are you seeing drivers take advantage of the most and actually use, and which ones are you seeing having the largest impact?
Yeah, Rigs Without SIGs, we've had quite a few folks that have signed up for that program. I mean, it's been around the longest since its inception in 2007. It's been the beginning. We've had almost 250 drivers that have quit smoking. We've had about 160 of them that have cut back on their smoking significantly. So that one has a lot of traction. People are trying to be healthier, and we all know what the risks of not just smoking, but nicotine can do. And then with the cancer screening kits, these are really simple things. They're like the ones that you see on TV where we mail it to you, you take the test, you pop it back in the mail, and then you get your results. And it's not just one of those things where, okay, well, here's something on your test. You probably ought to get that looked at. They're going to help you find the resources too, if something does come up on a test that's positive, and help you get the resources to figure out what to do next. So it's not just, okay, all right, bye-bye, here's the door kind of a thing. We're going to give you the resources that you need. So those are the two that I'm really seeing right now that are really growing.
I think that's incredibly important, because I think sometimes people are hesitant to test, because if they do get a result that they're not looking for, they're like, oh gosh, now I have to do something about it. And
Absolutely.
What do I do? So that support that's ongoing.
And you can do it on the road anytime. You don't have to be, and I know, when you're on the road for a long time. And so you don't have to think about it. You don't have to schedule it. You can do it on your own terms. You can do it in the privacy of your own, wherever you're at. And so it's the ease of it that I think is become really popular.
So next year marks your 20th anniversary. What does that milestone mean for your organization? And then what's the goal? What's next for you all?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, we're kind of a one of a kind. Dr. John, when he started, he was a DOT screener. And so he would see all of these drivers come through with health issues, and he just said, this has got to stop. And so that's kind of where the brainchild for St. Christopher's, where it began. And so, he passed away this last February. So we're working really hard to continue the core of what St. Christopher's is to be there for the drivers in whatever way, shape, or form that comes to be. And so right now, we just really want to, we're going to go back to basics. We want to be there for the drivers. We want to make sure we have the resources to give them, whether it is, living a healthy life, living your best life, or it's financial aid to help you so that you don't have to worry about how am I going to pay these bills, so you're not having to put your hope on hold, that you can just take care of your family and take care of yourself. So we've got some plans in the works for next year to celebrate St. Christopher's and reintroduce people what we do. Like I said, we've given out over $5.5 million. We're one of a kind. There's not a lot of folks out there that do what we do, not just on the financial end, but we give you the tools to keep yourself healthy. So we've got some things in the works. If just, you have to stay tuned.
We will.
One of one, second to none. You're so humble. We got some things in the work. You guys aren't literally changing lives daily. Diane Hutsell, the interim executive director and director of philanthropy at the St. Christopher's Trucker Relief Fund. Diane, thank you so much for joining us here today on FreightWaves Today. This has been truly amazing, and we hope to have you back, and hopefully here in studio just down the road in Chattanooga. Come on down.
Yeah, it's an hour away. So yeah, I would love to come in studio anytime. I'm shameless. I will talk about St. Christopher's anytime. Awesome.
We'll be sure to do that. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Of course. That was fantastic, man.
I think that, all of our guests were great. It was a great show. Yes.
Yeah.
What's your big takeaway from everything we heard today?
My big takeaway from everything that we have heard today is that innovation is at the forefront. And literally from the start of the show, when we were talking about railroads, when we were talking about drivers, when we were talking about just literally even how you got the Morning Minute is completely different from how you got it 6 months ago. So, and then with all of the interviews that we conducted today, I could just tell in the different themes is that innovation is going to lead the way. And of course, with Craig's Sonar Data Report, that it was filled with just telling signs that, hey, this is a game that is constantly evolving and constantly changing. That was my biggest theme takeaway.
Yeah, I'm feeling optimistic today. The same. I'm feeling optimistic about the market. I'm feeling optimistic about technology and automation and what it's doing to actually improve workflows and lives, not necessarily just replace jobs that some people seem to think it is going to do. And I'm feeling patriotic and optimistic.
Oh, patriotic and optimistic, that's a heck of a duo. I think we're a heck of a duo as well.
Yeah, thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, speaking of optimism and things I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show. We have a great lineup.
Well, who do we have?
We have John Ferguson of Pivot Supply Chain Solutions in studio. We'll have Charlie Dehoney of Upwell and Dan Heinen of Kleinschmidt in studio together, talking about their new partnership using AI to get carriers paid faster. And so it's going to be a great show tomorrow. That's it for FreightWaves Today. Stay tuned for the premiere of the brand new season of Cents Per Mile with a whole new lineup of hosts. And that's up next right here on FreightWaves TV.